welcome to the program. This is Vivica Williams, and you're watching Head to Head. The Minsk II peace deal, agreed to by the leaders of Ukraine, Russia, France, and Germany nearly 2 years ago, have not brought a lasting ceasefire in eastern Ukraine. But even if the Minsk agreements bring about peace, what about bringing justice for the atrocities which occurred during Russia's military intervention in eastern Ukraine? To discuss this and more is Peter Voitsekhovsky. He is research director at the U.S.-Ukraine Foundation. Welcome, Peter. Thank you for joining us.
Hello. It's a pleasure to be with you today.
So what I'd like to discuss with you just today is one particular case that we talked about with the case of Stepan Chubenko.
Chubenko.
So why, in your opinion, is this case really significant for us to look at what could possibly be the issues with transitional justice once Donbass returns to Ukrainian control?
Okay, so Stepan Chubenko was 16 years old when he was brutally killed by rebel militias in Donetsk 3 years ago. And everybody knows who the killers were. They, on two sides of the front line, the Ukrainian government as well as the authorities of the rebels have tried to bring those killers to justice. But when the push came to the shove, the actual perpetrator, his name is Vadim Pogodin, was first arrested in the Crimea, where he was essentially hiding at the time. But then the Russian government failed to give him away, to extradite him. They essentially refused to do it, despite Ukraine's official requests. That is one example that tells us how hard it will be to proceed with transitional justice. Many of the war criminals on the rebel side will be hiding in Russia, and without Russia's cooperation, justice will be hard to achieve.
Well, and this type of complicity from Russia, it also signifies the people that they would protect would be able to expose the Russian involvement as well.
Of course, of course. To begin with, it's no secret that the war would not have started without Russia's role in it. Russia tried to do it on the bigger half of Ukraine's territory. It failed in most places except for those two borderline regions. And Russia has been instigating and inflaming that conflict ever since. It's been nourishing it. Without Russia, nothing would have happened. So it's the Russian stand. But I want to bring up something else. I paid attention to a recent interview by Vadim Pogodin that was posted on YouTube, and he speaks there with the language of Russian imperialist warmongers. It's the viewpoint that shows how many people in Russia are missing the former Soviet Union, are missing the sense of Russia being an empire that dominated the whole region, and they want this imperial days to come back. This, for them, is the purpose of the war. And Pogodin says that straightforwardly. It's very pitiful, but it shows us the attitude of the neighboring country. Unless that attitude is changed, there cannot be a durable peace.
And so what do you see then as this is the next step? What could possibly happen that could lead to this ability to have transitional, the justice there, and to be able to change this kind of mentality?
Well, there are prerequisites to a durable peace. And this was pointed out many times by international leaders and experts and by Ukrainian leadership. There has to be a change in Russia's policy and Russian attitude. I can't help recalling the Nelson Mandela words that are quoted in world media today. Actually, President Obama was the one to quote it, where he said that no one was born with hatred. of other people based on their identity, belonging, etc. So these words totally 100% apply to situation in Donbass. Unfortunately, Russian propaganda has acted as a tool of hatred, as a teacher of hatred to those people for 3 years, and the legacy, the products of that school of hatred is there, and it'll have to be dealt with. So, if your question is about how to help the situation, well, apparently the only way that Russia can change its behavior is by putting more pressure on it. That's one thing. When Russia is forced to recognize that it cannot continue with this course of action, then changes will happen.
Well, this seems that it would mean like losing face, which is something that we see in leaders such as Putin and Trump and other leaders, where losing face is not acceptable. Do you think it would take a change in power in Russia for there to be any opportunity to have a change in the way Russia interacts with its neighbors?
You know, I am paying attention to the discussions when the case of Pogodin extradition came up in the media. It became widely discussed on both sides. Again, just a couple of months ago, I noticed that there were quite a few voices in Russia that were condemning him as a military criminal, as a scoundrel that he is. So, even though we realize it's not Putin's personality that decides everything, there is a so-called phenomenon of collective Putin, which perhaps analysts sometimes don't pay much attention to. But at the same time, collective Putin is not a monolith. There are many sane and reasonable and moral people in Russia who understands the peril of today's Russia's policy.
And so we're going to kind of have to hope and support people who do have this sane voice like this.
Absolutely. But in the meantime, Ukraine must realize that the peace is not easy to bring. And for the international community, it is important to understand that putting big hopes into a quick peace, it would be a little naive. We have to understand that a lot has to be done before a doable peace agreement can become a reality.
Well, thank you so much for being with us today, Peter, and we're definitely going to have you back on in the near future to have some more discussions.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. Have a great day. And today we were talking to Peter Voitsekhovsky from the U.S.-Ukraine Foundation about the issue of finding justice in eastern Ukraine after the Donbass returns to Ukrainian government control. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day.